Hi everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about companies going remote. My name is John Tracey. I'm a senior manager in EY Technology Consulting. Just a little bit of background. I've been a senior manager in EY for about 5 years, and I have over 25 years experience in the IT industry. Within EY, I provide a lot of information around IT strategy and transformation and transition. Prior to working with EY, I was working with IBM for around 15, 16 years. And during that time, I spent a lot of time as a client-facing service delivery management and client relationship management. My background further back than that is in mainframe systems programming. So I'm a techie at heart and worked my way up through the platform into the service management, into project management, and into strategy. So my key interests are developing the ability for IT to service business as best it can. Excuse me. So things to consider when looking at going remote. What most people in an office scenario don't realize is that they are actually working remotely, even though they are in their company office location. What I mean by that is that they are not working off a PC that's under their desk or a machine that's very close to them. They're working off a data center that is quite often miles from where they are, that's connected via a network and their desktop applications. The data centers can either be run by their own company or a cloud service provider, the likes of Google or Amazon or one of those. The difference when you start moving out of the office and working from home is principally around the facilities that you have available. The IT hardware, the network connectivity, and the access to systems and support. Just going through the sections I have here, in the first one is infrastructure. The hardware that you're going to use in terms of either a PC or a laptop that connects you into your organization. The network connectivity, I'll go into in a little bit more detail on the next slide, and the environment. When I'm talking about the environment here, I mean the actual workstation that you have, either in your remote location in your house or in a co-working location. Also bring into that the facility, if I can call it that, that's available on the laptop or computer that you're using, in terms of how your desktop is laid out and the ease of use of your setup. The second item there really is a very important one, and I think it's one of those ones that you can't pay too much attention to. It's the security around the access control. How do people access the systems that they're going to be using on a day-to-day basis? How do you manage their identity? How do you know that the people who are connecting are the people that you want to be connecting? And then the data protection one. The data protection one is clearly massively important as a remote worker, both from the safety of the data and from the safety of the people. We want to make sure that people who have access to confidential information are comfortable with how they use it and what they're using it for. Which brings me to people. Obviously, if you're going to be working remotely, you need to consider how people are going to work remotely and bring into account things like onboarding, so that they know what's expected of them, they know how to do what they need to do, and how to get help when they don't, or when they can't do what they need to do. Training is a big part of that, so making sure that they have the training required to use the tools and facilities that they have available to them, and then the support that's available should anything go wrong. A big one for in number 4 here around culture. A big one for a lot of organizations at the moment following COVID-19 has been the sudden and enforced removal of people from offices to remote working. This is a big shift in mindset for both management and for employees. From a management point of view, it can often be very unsettling not to see the people who are working for you. And from an employee point of view, it can be unsettling in terms of the office environment, being able to turn to the person next to you and have a conversation, or being able to ask somebody how to do something. These are important things when it comes to how you engage with the remote workers and how they're able to engage with the company. In recent times, there's been a bit more conversation around people feeling isolated and even lonely when working remotely. So it's something to bear in mind. Getting into what do we actually need to work remotely? What kind of IT systems do you need, and how do you connect the remote worker to the systems and tools they need to be productive and engaged? So clearly the first one is connectivity. How do we get to the systems? A lot of places in urban centres would have fixed broadband. I have fixed broadband myself. Doesn't mean that it always works, and certainly reliability is the key component of all of these things. Fixed broadband, my provider had a problem on Monday evening, and there was a mild panic in the house when people were going, "Where's the Wi-Fi?" So it is important to have a as resilient and as reliable a network connection as possible. The mobile broadband has improved greatly over the last number of years, and certainly with the 4G and 5G networks, this in terms of reliability and bandwidth, it's improved and is improving even as we speak. Virtual private networks are something that people probably have heard a bit more talk about in recent times as we've all been working from home. A VPN is essentially a secure tunnel through the web that connects you directly to your company's systems. It's usually defined by an IP address at the company's data center location. To use an analogy, it would be a bit like without a VPN, you'd be wandering into a housing estate looking for a house without any numbers. The VPN provides the number of the house and a direct access to it. The next thing that is important in all these scenarios, once you have your network, is the router or the modem that you use to connect to it. You need one that's sufficiently reliable and sufficiently recent to be able to use the network efficiently and reliably. In my house, we have a couple of signal boosters in the house to expand the range of our Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi doesn't work too well when you have concrete walls with iron bars through them to reinforce them. It tends to disrupt the Wi-Fi signal. So a signal booster that either works through your existing electric cables in the house, where you plug one end of the signal booster into a power outlet, and then the other into a power outlet elsewhere in the house, which boosts the signal to that area of the house. We touched on this earlier around security and how do you keep it secure? How do you keep people safe? How do you keep your data safe? And how do you keep access to your system safe? The most basic example is user access, where a user will use their user ID and password to log into a system that they've connected to via a web address. That is further enhanced by using multi-factor authentication. This is where you use more than one identification factor. An example of this would be where you would use it, for example, an ATM card. You go to the machine, your ATM card is one factor, your PIN number is a second one, so that the card and the PIN give you access to your account. Other options that are used for people to work remotely and access systems remotely, and one that I use myself, is a token generator. An RSA Secure ID is one of the brands that provide this. It's quite widespread. In this instance, you would connect to your systems using your user ID and password, and you'd also include a six-digit number that's generated randomly by the token generator. This is basically, there's an algorithm at the company end of things that says, yes, I recognize this as one of ours, so it lets the user access all the systems. The other aspect from a company perspective is mobile device management. Mobile device management is very useful and worthwhile when it comes to things like mobile phones, tablets, and laptops, and the security around them if they're lost or stolen. With mobile device management, there's a sort of the equivalent of a small piece of software on the device that enables the company to access the device to delete the data that's on it or to power it off. and block it from use if it's stolen. The mobile device management, MDM, isn't used for monitoring access or use of the device. It's certainly not there to monitor a user's activity. So that's something that just needs to be reaffirmed to workers. The next thing is your cloud service provider. So this is where the work gets done. These are where your systems and your applications and your data live. If you have the connectivity and the security in place, this is where this is the engine, as it were. This is where all the action happens. The up-to-date activity that happens in the cloud service provider is very important to actually getting the optimal results from the performance of remote workers. Collaboration Hub can help with this because it can bring that element of an engagement where your remote workers can be collaborating in teams. In EY, we actually use Microsoft Teams, but there's lots of other varieties around. Slack, Google Hangouts, lots of different approaches to collaboration. These are usually based in your cloud service provider or data center, where the sort of the heavy part of the work is done with a client server architecture. So the servers in your data center, and the client, or the smaller, lighter piece of software, is out on your remote location. Onboarding and training I touched on earlier on. This is really important for your employees and for your remote workers to get the most out of what they're using. Onboarding, Shane Evans mentioned this last week when he was talking about it from his organization's point of view. Really key to getting the best out of understanding what is expected from the company side of things and from the worker side of things. With the onboarding, there needs to be policies around data. There needs to be policies around how you access things, and procedures about accessing work tools and using work tools. It just makes it easier for everybody if they know what's expected of them and know how to use all of the facilities that are available to them. The training and the use of the available IT will come around things like using laptops, actually connecting. It's very useful to have somebody, a human person. In EY, we have for people who are joining, we have a buddy, who's somebody who can be contacted when you have sort of simple queries. How do I do this, or how do I access something, or what's the best way to do things? And again, it just brings people up to speed more quickly and provides a great deal of comfort for the user that they are not on their own. The next thing then is, it's all well and good when everything's working perfectly, but what happens when things don't work? From not being able to access applications or systems, to actually not being able to power on your laptop. How do I contact IT support for queries? Or for instance, if I can't log into my laptop, I'm not going to be able to send them an email. So I need to have a telephone number for IT support. In some instances, you'll find that an FAQ user guide can be very handy, and a troubleshooting guide can be very handy. The what if scenarios. What if I can't log into my laptop? What do I do then? What if I can't access my applications? What do I do then? Support provides that element of comfort for people, so that if something does go wrong, they know how to access it, how to fix it, and how to get back in action as quickly as possible. In a number of organizations I've been in, they have there's an automated password reset function that you set up when everything's going well. It uses voice recognition system, and it can allow you to reset your password without actually having to talk to a support desk. Quite a lot of the support desk queries are actually around password resets, so it's good to take a bit of the effort off of the support desk as well. The last thing, and certainly not the least thing, is the sustaining. How do I keep everything going? How do I keep the engagement with the remote workers in a way that makes it good for them and good for the company? Keeping software current is one of those things. When you are working off of older software, there can be bugs that come into it that make it fail or make it unusable. Keeping software current is something that can be done quite easily in a cloud-based environment, particularly if you're using software as a service, because your provider will usually keep up the software up to date, and current releases and bug fixes will be applied. In more legacy operations where you have previously had people working in an office environment and now they're working remotely, that might be a little bit trickier, but it's certainly something to keep in mind and to figure out how to do, because the level of frustration that comes from things that don't work properly can be very, very high, and very, very counterproductive. Keeping users informed of changes is important in relation to this as well. In my case, I had an email on Monday informing me that my version of Microsoft Outlook was going to be updated on sometime between Tuesday and today. That was just to inform me that some of the features would be changed, and how it looked and felt would change as well. This is important because when I logged in, the desktop that I was presented with in Outlook looked different. If I didn't know something was going to change, that could possibly be a bit unsettling for me, and could lead to calls coming into IT support that chew up their time and that aren't very helpful. The other part of it is gathering feedback from user experience. Oftentimes, a user will have an experience that's different to what a company thinks their user experience is. Again, this is something that Shane Evans mentioned last week, that they stay quite close to their users, and as remote users, it works for them because that's the way they're set up. In the case of particularly related to COVID-19, where people are working from home and they haven't had that experience of working from home as often, it's important that the company keeps in touch with them. I remember previously having a role where when I worked remotely, I got into an application, but if my connection dropped, the application thought I was still logged into it. So from the company's perspective, it looked like everything was fine. But from my perspective, I couldn't actually do anything. I had to get onto support to basically go into the application and kick me out of it so that I could log in again. So the view from the company side was very different from the view that I was getting in terms of how the application was being used. Now I've covered most everything that I was going to do there, but just one of the things I'd like to go back over was the data protection side of things. In a lot of instances, people are going to be working with data that's secure. It's very difficult to stop people looking over a shoulder, but in a remote working context, it should be easier because most people will be working from home. In a co-working environment, it's important to have things like perhaps privacy screens that you can put over a screen of a laptop that only allows the user who's in front of it be able to see what's on the screen. There are other things, particularly in relation to banks and access to account information. Again, this is where your policies and procedures come into play. This is where your user onboarding and their understanding of what they can and can't do with data is important, because it is something that is of concern to people about how their data is used and accessed by companies. Again, policies should take as much of this as possible. So that's it from me. I know that Tracey is going to look at the questions and pass them on back to me, which I look forward to. So I will leave it there and look forward to responding to any questions you may have. Thanks a lot.